When it comes to political campaigns, we are always fighting what we call a last war. Now, Donald Trump's election in 2016 was in no significant part a reaction to the disastrous 2003 invasion of Iraq and the subsequent years of what we refer to as a quagmire. As an upstart GOP primary candidate, Trump had said that George W. Bush's war of choice was the worst single mistake ever made in the history of our country. And then the second biggest mistake was when inbred idiots voted for Donald Trump thinking he was going to care about us, and he didn't. Um, so Trump took advantage of the GOP voter disillusionment, and then he weaponized his distance from the Republican establishment to make the case for America to retreat from its global leadership role. And he basically called his message America First, which he put America last. Now, it was this message that helped Trump handily dispatch the mainstream GOP's original consensus choice, Bush's own brother Jeb. Back in 2016, this was back in 2016 when he had said this, but that is no longer but that's no longer the world that we're living in. Now, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there's no going back to the America First that Trump claimed he was going to put. But that's not to say the public is clamoring for a war with Russia. The Trumpian worldview that embraced Vladimir Putin and threatened to abandon NATO has, for now, been repudiated. Republicans with their ears closest to the ground already fucking know this. J.D. Vance, who's a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate in Ohio, last month he basically said that he tried to channel Trump's nativist populism, saying that he didn't want U.S. troops to fight and die over Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But he says, I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine, Vance said, so he made his fucking point perfectly clear. Now, following a recent Vance campaign event, attendees basically at NBC News said that images of death and destruction on TV had helped them form their opinions about whether or not the U.S. should support a besieged Ukraine. Many were also unequivocally what they call supportive of the sanctions and the oil ban, expressing the need for empathy and generosity. And to paraphrase Mike Tyson, every America First isolationist has a plan until they watch some kid get hit in the mouth on TV. Ohio's primary is May 3rd, and it's barely a mere several weeks away. And while it's true that his campaign was already struggling, Vance has somewhat backtracked on his comments, which is a clear confirmation that he was not reading the room, and Vance isn't alone. In North Carolina, Trump-backed candidate Representative Ted Budd, who's on, basically he's backing him because he's on defense after praising Putin. As the Ukrainians have bled and died, former GOP Governor Pat McCrory said in a video bashing his primary opponent that Congressman Budd excused their killer. Now Budd is now trying to dig himself out of this mess by explaining that Putin is intelligent but evil. This clarification reflects a changing political reality on the right as it pertains to Putin. As National Journal's Josh Kraushaar colorfully puts it, Putin is less popular than syphilis. This feedback is not merely anecdotal, but according to a Quinnipiac poll released last week, a majority of Americans, including 74% of Republicans, think that Joe Biden has not been tough enough when it comes to punishing Russia for their invasion. Meanwhile, 64% of Americans, including 61% of Republicans, hold a favorable view of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Now, of course, public opinion matters most to people facing competitive races on the upcoming ballots. The most piece of shit Republican representatives are Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, who spoke at the white nationalist Klan rally that they had like a few weeks back. And then you also had where the audience cheered on Putin, and then you had a piece of shit named Madison Cawthorn, who called Zelensky a thug, and they are ensconced in safe districts, and their national infamy hasn't hurt them at all at the local level to date. But make no fucking mistake, the events of the last few weeks have brought implications that transcend even the American politics. The invasion has already done huge damage to populists all over the world, who prior to the attack uniformly expressed sympathy for Putin. This is what Francis Fukuyama had wrote. This includes Matteo Salvini, Jair Bolsonaro, um, um, Eric Zemmour, Marine Le Pen, Viktor Orban, and of course the piece of shit Donald Trump. And Trump's not going to be counted out because, but even with him losing re-election and inciting a Klan riot, and then finding himself on the wrong side of history, and also on the emergent foreign policy. On the wrong side of the emergent foreign policy shift hardly feels like the makings of a brilliant political comeback, though. Um, a field of anti-Trump Republicans is already lining up to run against him in 2024, according to the Associated Press. And should most of Trump's endorsed 2022 candidates lose, a possibility even before Russia crossed Ukraine's border, it would only chum the waters even more. And its would be primary opponents might rationalize that although Trump remains personally popular in the GOP, but the greater electorate is ready to move on from the unnecessary international drama that Trump calls on an almost daily basis a squatter. And this is not an absurd theory. The world is dynamic. Trump could still win in 2024, which we hope not, but the isolationist populism he deployed in 2016 isn't as likely to land today. Now, of course, the fickle court of the public opinion could swing back Trump's way between now and 2024, and perhaps the maggots will finally settle on a consistent message: is Biden too tough or too weak on Russia? And the horrors of the war in Ukraine will end with Putin's troops leaving the country that they had no business attacking in the fucking first place. Now, regardless, one thing is certain: Russia's invasion of Ukraine is one of the biggest international crises and upending of the world order in decades. This means that Trump can't run again in 2024 by playing the greatest hits, but he won't get much mileage out of attacking George W. Bush and the GOP established its forever wars, and praising Putin and suggesting that he could be managed, or even more ridiculous, turned into an ally, simply won't resonate. And that was the last fucking war that we saw. Yep. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King, and also you can hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you could donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of my YouTube channel, to help further support my work later on. So, yeah.